It's Steam Next Fest June 2025, and whilst I haven't been able to play as many games as I'd like this time around, we've got 25 racing games to dive into to see how I fared with them. I've split them into three categories: games I'll buy on release, games that are staying on my wishlist, and games that I've removed from my wishlist because I didn't gel with them. And there's a real mixed spread this time around. And kicking off my buying on release section is Recharge RC High Voltage. This is a remote control racing car game, and the physics of this are sublime, chef's kiss phenomenal. I love how nimble and light and reactive and front-endy the RC car is, because if you do slam on the accelerator, it kind of really goes meow, and you love it. But when you hit on the brakes, it wants to swap ends quite quickly, and so you're having to kind of feather it around all of the different corners. But because of the way how the track always has some off-road bumping or little moguls or ripples or whatever it is that you're doing, banked curves, like, you're really having to play into the terrain of the track and work out the safest and quickest route through, as well as also handling the handling model as you go. Alongside this, the track editor is beautifully done and reminds me heavily of Mod Nation Racers from the PS3, and you kind of dot around different point to points and then zoom into the track, pick your section, expand out what you want to do in it, and then turn it into like a banked curve, or place some objects, or make some of it off-road a little bit off-cambery, things like that. Superb, easy to understand, get really good results quite quickly. Recharge RC High Voltage, 2 absolute thumbs up and a day one release. Buy it for me. The other day one buy for me is Hobby Horse, and this is a ridiculous, I'm going to say equestrian-esque racing game, and the idea behind this is that you take on a hobby horse and then you have to get around various different environments. So it starts off in a gymnasium, then you go out into the forest, and there's other different environments too, where you'll need to gallop along and then press and hold jump and then release, but because the different jumps are at different heights or at different angles, you have to kind of really work out when to initiate the jump so that you then get enough air time and height to then get over the jump so that you don't then hit something and trigger a penalty. This is ridiculously stupid on the surface, but actually handles and plays exceptionally well, and is way beyond the initial kind of jokiness of what you'd think the setup is. Again, looks like there's going to be a decent track editor in here as well. Love the customization of things, and also the fact that there's like a drift boost mechanic going on too, which takes a bit of getting used to so that you can really kind of nail the goodness of it. But yeah, Hobby Horse, pleasant surprise, definite thumbs up, day one release for me. Next on my I'll be buying on day one list is Speed Demons 2. I didn't know there's a Speed Demons 1, to be honest, but it's an isometric motorway-based racing game, which is just as much about dodging the traffic as it is about racing against your competitors. I love the fact that this felt aggressive, on the nose, nimble, but also heavily Arcadian, because what you're doing is either racing against AI whilst dodging through traffic, or trying to take out the AI by ramming them off the road. Some of it was more about just the amount of traffic you can pass within a time limit or a certain distance. There was like chase versions of things as well. Really interesting vibe, and I like the isometric view and the style and aesthetic of this as well. This was a real pleasant surprise, handled beautifully, ran into no bugs or issues, and just had a certain chic style to it that I really gelled with. And so, definite 2 thumbs up, and probably one of my best surprises on this list. Ed and Edda Grand Prix is the kart racer of this list that I would recommend. And I think, I'm assuming this is based on a film. I need to go and research this. I was very surprised that there is a Lidl's livery in this game. Like, what's going on? But the handling of this works really, really well. I thought it was interesting that you collect orbs that then, once it's fully charged up a beast meter, you'll then boost. So you can't like drift to boost, for example. And there was an awful lot of everyone firing weapons at everyone, which then meant that you struggled a little bit to break away from the pack. And there's some definite rubber banding going on here. But the general theme and the graphics and the approachability and benignness of the kart racing reminded me heavily of a late PS2, early PS3 era kart game, and I see that as no bad thing. And whilst it may not be up there with like the biggest, bestest, shining version of a kart racing game, this was incredibly enjoyable, and there seemed to be lots of unlockable parts. And it reminded me a little bit of Sonic and Sega Transformed, where you could then attach different elements to your cars to change its stats, but have certain states of stats. So you could have like a power one, a handling one, a drift one. So yeah, lots of interesting fun to be had. Edda Grand Prix, a pleasant surprise. Which brings me to Formula Legends, which is the game I had the biggest expectations of coming into this list. And it was probably one of my oh no moments. And whilst I'm still going to buy it, I have some reservations. On paper, this game is everything I could want in a arcade Formula style game. It's taking cars from the 70s, 90s and 2020s, all different handling models, different styles. I spotted a Minardi pretend version in there with Pierluigi Martini. Thank the Lord for that. And then each track has a 70s, 90s and modern day version of it too. So the layout changes slightly. You'll see different aesthetics as well, and then you'll go off into races against 13 other AI opponents to try and battle for the win. Now, there's pit stops, there's tyre wear, there's damage, there's weather, although weather wasn't in the demo. All of that looks great and in theory should play great, but there's two issues I have with this game. The first one is the fixed camera angle is too low and too far back, and I really dislike where this camera is placed. It means that everything feels woolly and difficult to understand, and you don't get quite the sense of speed with this game that I was expecting to feel, which then translates poorly into the woolly handling. And there's two issues. The first is that braking is non-existent and feels really underwhelming. And secondly, there's a delay in the turning of your car from when you actually turn. And so it feels like there's a binary twist on the wheel, and the longer that you hold into a turn with the analog stick, the more tighter the turn becomes. And this isn't an exclusive problem with this game. 3D Clouds has done this in other games too, and I feel like this is their default stance on handling across many of their racing games, and it doesn't gel with me very well at all. And so they keep making games that I think look fantastic and feel like they're going to fit a certain vision for me, and I get very excited, and then they never quite stick the landing when it comes to handling for me. And so if they could make that a little bit more responsive and keep the rest of everything intact, I think this will be an absolutely sublime, fantastic game. But until there's more camera angles and that handling is strengthened and made more consistent, this will be a tentative buy on release for me. Back to pleasant surprises though. Next up is Speedboat League, and I had great fun with this one. It's speedboat racing as a kart racer. There's some really great theming in this, particularly the bathtub track. I'm so basic, I don't care. But the handling model of this was quite cool and interesting too, because you could potentially take more speed and circle round tight corners. And there's a boost that you can keep refilling by hitting various pads and kind of keeping yourself going. You can go really fast around a lot of these corners. But you could also go for a really tight V. And the speedboat, when you get into that V, can really kind of woof and turn around and then blast back off again. And both options felt viable. And so I really enjoyed this. There's a lot of weapons and power-ups that are in this game as well. My only comment was I was winning every race on hard mode on my very first go immediately. And so just be careful on the difficulty settings, and maybe it needs a little bit of a tweak during the course of development, if anyone from the devs of Speedboat League is watching. But everything else, fantastic, day one. Next up is Arcade Galaxy. And I'm going to be a bit weird with this one and say I was more excited about the track editor than I was with the actual racing. And it's because the track editor was so in depth that you could place either prefabricated like hairpins or like big U-turns like Rivazza 1 and 2 at Imola, or all kinds of different shenanigans into racetracks. But also, this isn't just a traditional racing with a car game. You can climb up walls, or you could like shoot yourself out of cannons. And so it felt like an obstacle course racing game with an obstacle course track editor. And so that really appealed to me. The actual racing itself is a bit odd because if you don't press forward, your character stops immediately dead in its tracks. There is no slowdown, there is no deceleration. You just grind to an immediate halt. And that took a little bit of getting used to. But once I did get used to it, I was off and away and having fun. And people were uploading tracks in the demo that were stupid and ridiculous. So Arcade Galaxy, I think, will be a great game. And it looks like there's already a decent community getting behind it too. Next up is Adrift, and this reminded me of fun selector games, partly because of the aesthetic and the camera angle being kind of isometric but flying from above behind where you're steering, but also because of the general nature of this game, where it's you against big, vast, open environments trying to get from A to B, but what you're doing is carrying energy cores that when you're in forested areas or tunnels or caves is sheltered from the sun so it doesn't get hot, so you can explore to your heart's content. But then you'll need to pick up these energy cores once you've worked out how to get from one place to another, and then dash as best as possible to get from A to B to then store the energy core in a safe place, because when it's in the sun it heats up and this effectively becomes like a time constraint for you to get from A to B on. The handling felt good. I did find that I was running into some issues with being able to spot my car with the rest of the world around it, but I think that's just because of some of the perspectives and the colour palettes that were involved. But yeah, Adrift is definitely a really promising game that I think people that enjoy fun selector games, and particularly what they're about to do with Over the Hill, I think you might find a similar game with a similar vibe here with Adrift. Next up is Carbox, and I quite enjoyed this one. Carbox is again another track builder game, but it's like you're building Matchbox style mini towns for you to then go racing inside or set up events. They don't necessarily have to be races. And what I liked about this is that it then downloads a good 20 odd ghosts into your race for you to then go up against as you try to complete the different challenges. And so what potentially could have felt like a quite lonely game then feels incredibly full of life, because you aren't necessarily playing against everyone at the same time. You've got that async ghost racing going on, which is helpful to see where other people are trying to cut corners or performing better lines. The track builder element of Carbox wasn't included in this demo, so I just had to go on the driving alone, but the driving felt solid, if a little bit understeery, but I got used to it over the course of the demo and it felt consistent at least. And I don't mind understeer if it's consistent because you get used to it. So yeah, pleasantly surprised, cute, and full of ghost-like charm. So Carbox is another one that I'll be considering buying on release. As we transition from games I'll likely buy on day one to games that are staying on my wish list, we'll kick off with Lanesplit. And what I loved about this is its aesthetic and vibe. This, particularly in the loading screens, feels like someone has gone around and taken video footage early in the morning of various different Japanese highways and roads and just areas. And then it's been laid out in Lanesplit for you to then try and dodge traffic as fast as possible to build combos and score points. And that's really all the game is. And I think this is why it sits in my wish list, because I couldn't understand what else there was beyond that. But also, the way how this game does it and the motorcycle handling felt fantastic. And so it's a very niche experience with a very specific aesthetic and vibe and feeling. But the flow state of being able to really quickly dodge in and out of different traffic and just journeying around at twilight hours in Japan on your motorcycle felt really quite oddly relaxing. And so, yeah, staying on my wish list. I still don't quite know what I think of it, but I did enjoy my time. And hilariously, Lane Hunters then follows on from that. And this is the same principle, but with a car and competitive. And so what Lane Hunters is about dodging traffic as long as possible, but it's a 1v1 battle. And the idea is that you need to be able to dodge traffic and then get 100 metres ahead of your opponent if you're racing against a human online. There wasn't an AI opponent to do it in the demo. And so the demo itself was just me dodging in and out of traffic because I couldn't team up with anyone to do the actual real quote-unquote game. But again, good handling, being able to swip in and out of different cars and lorries, was really adrenaline fueling, and the nippy handling makes all of the difference with this, because you're trying to kind of thread the eye of a needle at very fast speeds, and sometimes the traffic kind of moving across, kind of catching you unawares, meant that it kept you on your toes. I quite like the competitive nature of this. I'd quite like to see some AI integration here so that it doesn't rely solely on online multiplayer though, so that it can become a experience that lives on should there not be a community behind it. The next game on my list is Wild Horse Racing, and I have so many thoughts about this. I think the principle of this game is fantastic. It's wild horse racing through weird and wonderful environments, trying to get from A to B by jumping over various obstacles and running as fast as you can. The implementation of how this works, though, is a real strangeness. So you've got WASD and your arrow keys, and you'll have to button mash depending on what it's telling you at that time. So it might be WSWS, then it might be AD, then it might be up down arrows or left right arrows, and then it might be both W and up and then S and down, or A and left and D and right, or it might be various combinations of it, and you're constantly having to work out and redexterize your fingers to make sure that you can keep up. And because the AI just kind of does it serenely, it's really difficult to win. And so I very much enjoyed the aesthetic and the vibe of this and the party game nature, but also there's some additional mini games. There was like a send up of Vampire Survivors, but you're playing as a horse, like jockey with a whip, trying to like whip various different things out of the way. You could put your horse on a treadmill and try and practice some of these mechanics to then improve your stats. There was another bit where you had to like clean off your hoofs, and it's all done in a tournament with a leaderboard to try and score more points and therefore win prizes. So lots to do in this game. Definite wish list, probably towards the day one buy potentially. It was just really unique and it took a while to get used to. Similarly, staying on my wish list and potentially a day one buy is the Rift. This is a aircraft point-to-point racer and time trial game. And what I liked about this is how nimble and fast this game becomes, but also how exacting it expects you to be. And this is one of those games that is going to frustrate so many people because all of the tracks have some weird kind of tilt and try and squeeze your plane through cracks. So not only are you having to deal with moving in a 360 environment at pace, and you can shoot targets that then give you boosts, which I thought was a great idea, but you'll then have to twist and turn to kind of get through like slithers in walls. And it's that where you'll kind of, if you mistime it or get it wrong, you'll just smash into the wall and you'll lose loads of time. So hard, exceptionally rewarding and fun to play, the Rift. Next up is Evil Knievel, and again, there's something very retro-tastic about this that I particularly enjoyed. What I didn't enjoy so much is the control system. And I'm so used to, I think, with games like Trials, they've set the foundation of whenever you're accelerating and braking and then using the analog stick to kind of twist and go back and forth on your bike, they all play exactly the same way. But the right analog stick is back to front in what it does compared to every other game of this type I have ever played. and I can't get used to it. And so I just kept crashing everywhere, and it was really doing my head in. And that's a shame because, again, bright and colourful graphics, it's going through someone's career and making it feel like there's big key events going on and ridiculous stunts that you're busy trying to perform. And I like the whole what it's trying to do. I just cannot wrap my head around the controls. And the fact that the physics are then quite heavy as well. And so you get it wrong and then you go, oh no, I'm getting it wrong, but you've already gone too far, and so you can't kind of course correct because it's too weighty and it takes too long to swing the other way. So yeah, this is probably a me thing more than a game thing, but I think when you've got standard controls that every game in this genre does, you're being daring to change and go against the grain, and if you've not got evidence to show that that's better, it feels like a strange user experience decision for me. Next up is Grapple Car, and again I'll file this one under I love the idea of this, and I was struggling a bit with the controls, but I was getting there towards the end of my time with the demo. This is a circuit or point-to-point racer, largely circuit, and whilst you can steer with the car, what you do instead to make tighter turns and to get speed boosts is to use the right analog stick to fling a grapple left or right to hang on to buildings or concrete pillars to then swing yourself round corners quicker. I love the idea behind this. It's not unique to Grapple Car, but the way how it's built around trying to give you speed boosts, but also you can kind of course correct yourself that way too, feels particularly well done with Grapple Car. I think my issue with it is the grapple feels like it's too oversteery, and so you end up kind of half grappling and then not getting the speed boost, or just not kind of finding the right way to get around a track. And I have to say, actually, the tracks themselves sometimes don't telegraph where you're supposed to go very well. And so it required me to explore, particularly on the very first track. I spent a good 5 minutes just going around in a loop, going where am I supposed to go next, not realising I was supposed to go off onto a beach and up into the mountains, because actually it was the least telegraphed way to go. So I think if that gets solved and I get more used to the controls, this will probably go higher up my list, but I really like the idea behind Grapple Car and I think it's a fun game to play. Tahitian Driftin is up next, and this game wins the award for most arcade voiceover on the list because it's going for that late PS1 N64 style, not only with its graphics but also its handling model and just general sound design. Everything here is 1998 and I'm here for it. The game itself was good fun to play. The rubber banding is extreme though, so if you are terrible, the AI basically stop and wait for you. If you're decent, they'll keep up and start harrying you. So it did feel a little bit arbitrary as to whether you was good or bad at this game. But yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I think my main critique of this was I struggled a bit with the handling because you'd have to drift and turn and boost, kind of brake to try and get round some of the bends. Otherwise it just felt like your vehicle didn't turn at all, and there was no difference between how you turned fast speed versus slow speed, and that just kind of felt a little bit like a cognitive dissonance for me. But I still had fun and it's still on my wish list, and so yeah, Tahitian Driftin', if you like that late 90s vibe, this will be the one for you. Day of Drift is up next, and whilst it lacks some graphical flair, it definitely has a unique and challenging handling model. This game is so soapy, but it's consistently soapy, and that's what I ask from racing games, is consistency. I can get used to your style of handling, usually, if it's consistent, and whilst I've never really come across a game quite as soapy as this, You get used to it, and then you start to lean into how to make it fast, and more importantly, get to the end of the course with enough points to therefore score a medal to unlock the next challenge. And that's the key thing with Day of Drift. You've got to be fast but also drift at the same time. I quite like the fact that a lot of the tracks had kind of fake outs, so the track would open up but actually kind of signal that you might want to go off to the right, but actually you didn't need to. You can then come back again. But then that might allow you to do like a little drift down a straight, or it might have roundabouts on that you can go around a couple of times if you're very quick to rack up drift points and then shoot out. But if you're panicking, you can kind of skip the roundabout and try and catch up a few seconds so that you can make it to the end. It was a real challenge to get used to this game, but once I did, I started to really enjoy it, and so that's why it's staying on my wish list. But just be aware, it is soapy out there on track. Completely switching gears, we've now got Speed Rivals, which is slot car racing. And again, whilst graphically quite basic and rugged, what mattered here was the handling and physics, I guess, because you'll be able to see that you've got different levels of speed that you can go up and down, showing on that light on the joystick in the corner of the screen. And that's really what's crucial for whenever you're going into tight hairpins or switchbacks or chicanes, whatever it is that you're doing. Depending on what track you're in, and there's real world track designs in here, which I was loving, you can then spin off, and then you have to kind of power tack to get your car back on again as quickly as possible to then get going and get fast laps and win the race. The ultimate you're stuck at 1 versus 1, I think, brings this game down for me, because I'd like to see more than 2 cars on the track at once. And also the fact that the AI couldn't seem to make it round more than 2 corners without spinning off felt like this didn't really sell the demo at its best. But there's a good core mechanic here that I think would be quite interesting to play in local multiplayer. But again, I would be more interested if it allowed me to have 3 or 4 cars on track rather than 2. The penultimate game on my list that stayed on my wish list is Sweep City, and this is for fans of Power Wash Simulator. Very similar to that, where you're cleaning up the world, you'll be cleaning up the pavement by taking control of a sweeper and sweeping up leaves and trash off of the floor and then depositing it back at base. Your sweeper is upgradable with its trash container or leaf container, and you can also upgrade its engine and its tyres and some of the aesthetics in the cabin that you're in. I think the handling model of this was fine. It's quite slow, but that's because it's a sweeper, so it's going to be. And I did get satisfaction and a slight scratch of a potential OCD of trying to clean up everything on the place that you're given in the demo to clean. It could really do with some good maps so that you could work out how to get back to base and what you have and haven't cleaned. And it's lacking all of that polish and ease of understanding, I think, that Power Wash Simulator did so well by being able to highlight what had and hadn't been cleaned. But I think because you're one step removed, sat inside a cabin just steering around something, I felt one step removed from the cleaning experience, so it wasn't nearly as satisfying as Power Wash Simulator is. So, stayed on my wish list out of a morbid curiosity as much as anything else. Nothing technically wrong with it, it just didn't do very much for me. That same principle applies to Little Laps, where it didn't move me, but I couldn't see much technically wrong with the game. So it stayed on my wish list more out of curiosity than anything else. Little Laps is a single screen time trial game, and the controls are set up similar to slot cars, but you don't have a brake, you only have an accelerator. And so what you're doing is accelerating down straights and then letting go of the accelerator to then try and get round corners. And so that fits itself well to a single button game design, but it's single player only. And so what you're doing is busy uploading ghosts of your best lap or downloading ghosts from other people to then kind of race yourself up against. But I don't know, there's something I felt too out of control, I think, was my problem with this. Because of that, you've just got to let go and kind of coast around. It felt unsatisfying, but also quite inconsistent. And I think some of that was down to the viewpoint of what you've got for each lap. So sometimes corners appear maybe tighter than what they should do. And because you can't judge your acceleration and kind of current speed by any real metric, it felt a little bit too guessy for me as well. And so interesting, but didn't really gel with me too much. The last 5 games on this list are all games that I removed from my wish list and won't be looking at any further because I didn't gel with them, or I just struggled with them technically for one reason or another. The first of these is No Break No Gain. It's an obstacle course style point-to-point racer, all about time trials and surviving. It seemed unnecessarily harsh and hard, but didn't really have flexible controls to back it up, and it felt like it was being positioned as a rage game for me, which is never a good idea when it comes to races. There was explodable mines and barrels everywhere. The fact that so much of the track required you to have both wheels on tiny little planks rather than just going up a wooden plank started to really grate on me. And I found wrestling with the camera really annoying, whilst also trying to position myself and kind of doing like a 30,000 point turn. And so I just didn't find it enjoyable to play, and that's why that didn't work for me. Florida Interstate 86 was the next game on this list, and I feel a bit harsh for not keeping this on my wish list, but I think it's because Lanesplit does this better. And it's an endless racing game where you extend your timer by doing dangerous driving close to people, trying to extend out your timer. And whilst you've got some 80s synthwave music going on, some nice day to night transitioning of lighting, you're collecting cassette tapes for turbos, for example. It just all felt a little bit numb and like not unimpressive, but I just didn't feel engaged. And I think because I played this first and then I played Lanesplit straight afterwards, which felt so much more visceral and I felt in the action, I felt again too serene and removed from this to make it feel like I was too invested in it. And so sadly for me, Florida Interstate 86 was removed from my wish list, but I can totally see why others that enjoy a calmer, endless runner style game would like this, and I would recommend it for that crowd. Swoosh Mania is another obstacle style time trial racing game where you're trying to get from A to B, avoid all of the traps and don't explode. This has the same problem as Tahitian Driftin has, but worse. And the problem is it doesn't matter how fast or slow you're going, your car's handling doesn't seem to change very much. And so if you're turning slow, the turning circle is still quite atrocious and very drifty and floaty. If you're going fast, the same thing happens. And so I just found myself skidding off constantly in this game and feeling really frustrated at the fact that the game is trying to make you go fast, but the track design and the implementation of everything that can make you explode doesn't allow you to drive at that limit. But then the handling model doesn't really want you to drive slow either and doesn't reward you for being careful. And so I found this quite a frustrating game to play. And whilst there's great online leaderboard integration, and I quite like the graphic design of this as well, I just really didn't enjoy playing it, and so that's why it's removed from my wish list. Good Morning Human threw a different curveball at me, and that was technically unplayable. In this game, I think you're trying to guide your airship through various different courses to entertain this sentient AI computer being. And I quite like the idea and the general kind of comedic tone that the AI was giving and the sass it has. But when it actually came to the gameplay, I couldn't steer the thing. And so it didn't matter what control schemes it kept telling me about and what buttons I'd press. The ship would not steer consistently in any one direction. And so I just kept crashing over and over and over and over again. I tried keyboard, I tried controller, it would not have it. And in the end, I just got so angry, I uninstalled it, and that's off of my wish list. And I can see people in the Steam forums kind of saying the same thing. So a bit of a missed opportunity there from a demo perspective. And last but not least is Sandrail Race. And this was pure disappointment. It feels like an asset flip game for me, where someone has bought it's like a desert landscape and a couple of cars, and they've just put in random points in just open environments and gone, there you go, race that. But the handling is very poor. The way how your car interacts with the environment that's supposed to be a desert and bumpy everywhere is minimal, to say the least. The AI gets stuck and confused and can't blast off out of the ground properly. It just feels soulless and empty and devoid of any character or feeling or reason to play, and was by far the biggest disappointment and letdown of this list, and I'd recommend no one touch that with a barge pole, sadly. And that is the racing list from Steam Next Fest June 2025. Hope you found something of interest in there. A real smattering of quality and not so quality games. But hopefully I've guided you and steered you in the right direction.